I never thought a simple test could ruin my life. It was an ordinary evening. I was sitting at my laptop watching adverts for DNA tests. Find your ancestors. Find out where you come from. Sounded interesting. Why not give it a try? I ordered the test simply out of curiosity. I wasn't looking for any secrets. I just wanted to find out if I had roots in some distant country. A week later, the box arrived. I sent the sample and forgot about it. But when the results came back, I realized I had made a huge mistake. I opened the letter and started reading. Database comparison complete. Your next of kin, none. I reread it several times. How was this possible? I skimmed over the details. My DNA didn't match my mother's. Not just by a few %. Not at all. It was like we weren't T-related. I froze. A sense of panic grew inside. I closed the laptop and took a deep breath. It's just a mistake, I told myself. The database might have failed. We need to try again. But a terrible suspicion had already settled inside. I didn't know what to do next. But this was just the beginning. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the test results, as if they might change their essence if I looked at them long enough. It was a mistake. There had to be a mistake. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I decided to talk to my mother. She was sitting in the living room drinking tea and watching TV when I walked in. Mom, I need to talk. She looked at me with a slight smile, but tension flashed in her eyes. Of course, sweetheart. Is something wrong? I took a deep breath. I had a DNA test. I expected surprise, curiosity, maybe a joke. But her face froze. She stopped breathing for a few seconds. Her voice became strained. I put the results in front of her. It showed that we weren't related. She looked at the paper, then back at me. Oh, honey, there was a strange softness in her voice. These tests aren't always accurate. They're often wrong. I tensed. But Mum, it's not just an ancestry test. It's a genetic match. If the test were inaccurate, it would show a partial match, but we don't have one at all. Her face remained calm, but I could see her hands clutching the cup. You're just getting yourself worked up. We're a family, honey. I'm your mum. Full stop. But in that moment, I realized the truth. She knew. She knew all along. But she didn't want me to know. I needed to know the truth. And now I couldn't stop. I walked out of the living room, feeling my insides tighten with fear and doubt. Mum had lied to me. I could see it in her eyes, hear it in her voice. She tried to convince me that the test was wrong, but she wasn't even surprised by the result. That meant one thing. She already knew the truth. But what was she hiding? That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed the conversation over and over in my head. Those tests are wrong. I'm your mum, full stop. I didn't believe her. The next morning, while Mum went off to the shop, I decided to look up the answers myself. I started with the paperwork. I went into her room, opened an old wooden cabinet, and started going through the drawers. Birth certificate, no. Photographs, no. Old letters, no. But suddenly, I came across a small box hidden in the back of the cupboard. When I opened it, inside was an old newspaper. I unfolded it, and at that moment, my heart almost stopped. On the front page was my face. Next to it was the headline, "Missing Girl. The search continues." I felt the blood rush from my face. My hand trembled as I read the date. This article was over 20 years old. And it wasn't just a missing girl, it was me. I wasn't her daughter. I had been kidnapped. I turned my head sharply towards the door, expecting my mum to be about to walk in. She had kept this from me my whole life. But now I knew the truth, and I had to find out the rest of it. But I didn't know one thing. I just opened a door I shouldn't have opened. I sat on the floor, holding an old newspaper. My throat was dry, and my heart was pounding so loud I thought it could be heard throughout the house. The missing girl. They were looking for me. But how? Why? What had happened then, 20 years ago? I turned the page. Inside was a small article. The parents of 8-year-old Emily Hayward are holding out hope for her return. The girl disappeared in a shopping center, and no trace of her abduction has ever been found. Police continue to investigate. I reread this over and over again, but my mind was all jumbled up. Emily Hayward. Is that my real name? I couldn't stay here. I folded the paper neatly, tucked it into my bag, and quickly walked out of the house. I headed to the town library. There was a newspaper archive there where I could find more information. On the way, I tried to gather my thoughts. My mother is not my mother. But if she was, why did she kidnap me? I opened a search engine and typed in missing Emily Hayward. Several links popped up. I clicked on the first one. Emily Hayward case closed. The girl has been declared dead. I reread it several times, but it was impossible. I'm alive. How could they declare me dead? I started looking further. After a few minutes, I found an article dated 2 years after the disappearance. After a long search, police have concluded that Emily Hayward, who went missing at the age of 8, is dead. No evidence of abduction has been found. But I knew the truth. I hadn't just been kidnapped. I had been hidden. But who was behind it? I needed to go home and get the woman who called herself my mother to tell me the truth. I returned home, holding the printouts of the articles in my hands. The door closed quietly behind me, but inside I was seething. Mum was sitting in the living room, flipping through a magazine as if nothing had happened. I took a deep breath, walked over, and threw the paper on the table. Is there something you want to tell me? She looked up. There was no surprise on her face, just a slight tension. Where did you find this? I crossed my arms over my chest. Is it true? I'm not your daughter. She slowly put the magazine on her lap. Sit down, Clara. I didn't sit down. She sighed, ran her hand through her hair. I knew you'd find out someday. But this isn't how I wanted it to happen. I gritted my teeth. Not like this. You stole me. You robbed me of my family. She shook her head. I saved you. I shuddered. From what? She looked at me with a long, hard stare. From your real parents. My breath hitched. What are you talking about? She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street. They weren't looking for you, Clara. They declared you dead because it was more convenient for them. I felt my hand shaking. It's a lie. It's true. She turned to me, her voice hard. You think I stole you? No. I found you. Alone, scared, in an abandoned house. They left you there to die. I shook my head, not believing a word she said. You're lying. She pressed her lips together. Then check for yourself. I stood there, not knowing what to say. If it's true, who were my real parents? And why did they abandon me? I left the house without saying a word. My head felt heavy with thoughts. If she wasn't lying, if my real parents didn't want to find me, why? I headed for the library again. I needed real proof, not just her words. I opened the archives again. Articles about my disappearance flashed before my eyes. Parents hope for a miracle. The search for little Emily continues. Girl's fate remains unknown. But then I found an article that stopped my breath. Emily Hayward's parents have closed their daughter's missing persons case. They've declared her dead and abandoned any further search. I reread it several times. They stopped the search themselves. They decided I was gone. No one forced them to. They just accepted it. I tried to find more information. After a few minutes, I came across an interview. After 2 years of searching, the Hayward family has accepted the tragic reality. They are letting their daughter go, knowing they did everything they could. I scrolled down the page until I saw a picture of my parents. The picture was of a happy couple. They were smiling. It was as if nothing had happened. I no longer existed. They had cut me out of their lives. I felt a lump come up in my throat. I needed to talk to them. I needed to know their truth. I sat in the library, clutching a printout of the article. My mind was all jumbled up. They'd given up on me. My real parents. I'd always thought that if I was in this situation, they'd look for me until the last minute. But the reality was different. Why? I felt my phone vibrate. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. I know who you are. Call me. It's important. I looked at the screen, trying to figure out how someone got my number. I dialed the message. Who is this? The answer came a few seconds later. Your brother. I froze. A brother? I never knew I had a brother. I started to type a reply, but the phone rang. The same number. I pressed the call button. Hello? Clara? Is that really you? The voice was tense, masculine but hopeful. Who are you? My name is Nathan. I'm your big brother. I gripped the phone tighter. I don't have a brother. You did. You just don't remember. My heart was beating faster. Why are you texting me? He sighed heavily. Because I never believed in your death. I froze. What do you mean? Our parents. They dashed. His voice shook. Then he continued, more firmly. They lied to all of us. I felt a twinge inside me. Lied about what? About what happened to you. My breath hitched. I don't understand. They weren't looking for you. They didn't want you to be found. In that moment, I realized he was the only one who could tell me the truth. Where are you? In the city. We have to meet. I hesitated for a second. Okay. I walked out of the library, his last words echoing in my head. Our parents are not what they seem. And I felt like I was getting close to something really scary. I went to the cafe Nathan had indicated. It was crowded inside, but among all the faces I recognized him at once. He looked at me as if he'd seen a ghost. I sat down across from him, trying to keep my cool. Is it true? I asked. Are you my brother? He nodded. Yes. Why don't I remember anything about you? Nathan ran his hand over his face, as if he were collecting his thoughts. Because they made sure you didn't remember. I froze. What are you talking about? He sighed. After your disappearance, your parents started acting weird. First they cried, they gave interviews, and then they just stopped talking about you. Stopped talking? It was like you never existed. I felt my insides turn upside down. They weren't looking for me? Nathan shook his head. I was little, but I remember. I asked them about you. They said you were in a better place. That we needed to move on. But they declared me dead? Yeah, but only because it was convenient for them. I'm clutching my coffee cup, trying to make sense of what I'm hearing. What do you mean? Nathan looked at me carefully. They were hiding something more. They knew what had happened to you, but they didn't want you back. My chest tightened. Why? He pressed his lips together, clearly not knowing how to say it. Because, Clara, you weren't supposed to survive. I felt everything go dark. Were they trying to get rid of me? Nathan nodded. I don't know the whole truth, but one thing I knew for sure, they were lying to everyone. I felt cold. I need to see them. Nathan frowned. It's dangerous. I clenched my fists. I don't care. I want to know what they did. I stood up. Are you with me? He hesitated, but then nodded. Yes. We walked out of the cafe. I was going to face my parents and find out the truth they've been hiding all these years. We pulled up to my parents' house. My heart was beating so loud I thought it could be heard outside. Are you sure? Nathan asked, his hand on the steering wheel. Yes, I answered, even though I was shrinking inside with fear. The house looked just as I remembered it from the pictures in the newspapers. Big, well-kept, with neatly trimmed bushes. But now it seemed alien to me. I went to the door and pressed the bell. It took a few seconds before the door opened. Standing in front of me was the woman who was once supposed to be my mother. She had changed. Older, thinner, but there was still something cold in her eyes. She froze when she saw me. Clara, she whispered. I clenched my fists. Or was it Emily? Her face went pale. We need to talk, I said. She glanced around, as if checking to see if anyone else was watching, then stepped aside, inviting us in. Nathan stepped forward, but she held up her hand. Just her. I looked at my brother. He didn't want to let me go, but I nodded, letting him know I could handle it. I stepped inside, and the door closed behind me. The living room smelled of coffee and old wood paneling. Everything was in its place, as if nothing had changed. You found me, she said finally, sitting down in the chair. Yes. Now tell me the truth. She looked me straight in the eye. Do you really want to know? I nodded. She sighed. Good. But then be prepared for the fact that you won't like this truth. I clenched my fists. Tell me. She tilted her head, as if weighing where to begin. You're not missing. We didn't lose you. I froze. What? She looked at me with cold weariness. We got rid of you. The air went out of my lungs. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Why? She interlocked her fingers, as if it was hard for her to speak. Because you were dangerous. I shook my head slowly. You're lying. No. Your brother was too young to know the truth. But you're not like the other kids. I felt a chill run down my spine. What are you talking about? She leaned closer. You did something terrible when you were little. I felt dizzy. What was it? She picked up a photograph from the mantel and held it out to me. It was of a little girl with dark eyes. "That's your sister," she said. I blinked. I didn't have a sister. She nodded. "No, not anymore." I felt my breath hitch. "What do you mean?" Her voice turned icy. "You killed her, Clara." I recoiled. "That's a lie." She sighed. "That's why we decided to get rid of you. You were a threat." I couldn't breathe. Everything was spinning. "You're lying. Remember, Clara. If you can." I closed my eyes, but something vague started to come back to me. A dark room. The screams. The smell of blood. I grabbed my head. "No. Now you know why we left you." I couldn't believe it. But if it was true, who was I really? I jumped up from the couch. My chest was tight. My ears were ringing. "It's not true." I screamed. I couldn't have done it. The woman who called herself my mother remained seated. There was no anger in her eyes, only weariness. "We thought for a long time what to do with you. You were strange, silent. Sometimes you just stood there staring at one point." I froze. "But one day it went too far," she continued. I shook my head, stepping back. "No. You were 8 years old. I left for a few minutes, and when I came back..." She paused. "Your sister was lying unconscious. You stood there looking at her as if nothing had happened. You felt dizzy. Scraps of memories flashed through your mind. A dark room. The crying. Bright lights. Blood on my hands. I felt a chill run down my spine. You're lying." My voice trailed off. "No, Clara. We were scared. We thought you were mentally ill. The doctors said there was something wrong with you, but no one could explain what it was." I couldn't believe it. "Then why didn't you give me to the doctors?" She stopped talking. "Because no one would have believed us. We were a rich family. A scandal would have destroyed us." I swallowed. "Then what did you do?" She looked at me, something akin to regret flickering in her gaze. "We faked your disappearance." I froze. "You were a problem that needed to be gotten rid of." My legs gave out, and I slowly sat back down on the couch. "You were a child that couldn't be fixed." I gripped the armrest of the chair, trying to breathe steady. "We set it up so no one would ask questions. We knew someone else would find you." I looked up at her, and my voice trailed off. "You just threw me away." She didn't answer anything. At that moment, I realized I didn't want to hear her voice anymore. I stood up, turned round, and walked towards the exit. She didn't stop me. I walked out of the house with only one thing on my mind. I wasn't cut out of their lives because I was missing. They had decided I no longer existed. But now I was back, and I was going to find out the whole truth. I walked out of the house, feeling a mixture of anger, fear, and despair bubbling in my chest. My parents had gotten rid of me. They didn't want me in their lives. But there was something else. I felt that the truth they told was incomplete. I got into the car where Nathan was waiting. "What did they say?" His voice was strained. I looked in front of me, struggling to grasp reality. "They faked my disappearance. On purpose." He gripped the steering wheel. "Why?" "They said that I'd done something terrible." Nathan looked at me sharply. "What?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "They said I had a sister, that I had hurt her." There was silence. "Is that a lie?" he asked cautiously. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've been having these strange memories in my head, fragments of them, but I'm not sure if they're real." Nathan clenched his jaw. "We need proof." I nodded. "Yes." He started the car. "I have an idea." I looked at him. "What was it?" "When you disappeared, Mom went to a psychiatrist. She was in therapy for a long time after you disappeared. Maybe she has records." I frowned. "Do you think they could prove anything?" "If there's something about you in them, yes." We knew it was a bit extreme, but we needed to know the truth. If my parents wanted to hide something important, then we had to expose it. We headed over to their house. Today I was going to find out what they'd been hiding from me all these years. We were standing in front of my parents' house again. This time I felt no fear, only determination. "Are you sure?" Nathan asked. "Yes," I answered, looking at the doors that hid the truth. The house was quiet. The parents were probably asleep. We knew where to look, in my father's study. He always kept important documents in an old desk. We cautiously stepped inside. I heard the clock on the wall ticking off the seconds as we made our way down the corridor. The study looked just like it did when I was a kid. Dark wood, the smell of paper and dust. It's locked, Nathan whispered, trying to open the desk drawers. I looked around and saw the key on the shelf. The first drawer was empty. The second, old bills. But the third, I found a thin black folder. I opened it and my heart sank. It was the psychiatrist's notes. I started reading. Patient LH, mother, reports persistent panic attacks related to the loss of her youngest daughter. However, despite the official version of the disappearance, signs of profound repression of memories related to events prior to the child's disappearance are present. I froze. Nathan read along with me. The official version? He frowned. What did that mean? I turned the page. In conversation, the patient mentioned that she felt fearful of her youngest daughter. Reported that the girl was behaving unusually, saying strange things, and was once found next to her sister in an unconscious state. I felt my fingers go cold. They were telling the truth, I whispered. But what came next was even worse. The patient is certain that her youngest daughter didn't just disappear. However, she is afraid to say more because she claims that no one can know what really happened. I take a breath. They know something else. Nathan stared at the document in silence. We need to leave, he said. But before we could make a move, a voice came from behind us. What are you doing here? I turned around slowly. My father was standing in the doorway. He was holding a shotgun. I froze. My father stood in the doorway, his hands clenched tightly around the gun. There was no anger in his eyes, just tiredness. Nathan raised his hands slowly. Take it easy, he said. But my father didn't even look at him. His eyes were fixed on me. You shouldn't have come back, Clara. His voice was hoarse. You shouldn't have sought the truth. I clenched my fists. Why? What are you so afraid of? He shook his head slowly. You don't understand. Then explain. My voice trembled, but I didn't back down. My father took a deep breath, as if deciding whether to go on. We weren't trying to hide it for us, but for you. I clenched my teeth. Really? You declared me dead? You didn't want me back. He was silent for a moment, then sat back in his chair. You really don't remember. I remained silent. You were special. Ever since you were a little girl. Your mother was afraid of you. I exhaled sharply. That's rubbish. You were different, Clara, he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. You were different. I froze. You don't remember your sister, do you? I swallowed. Not completely. He nodded, as if expecting that. We tried to help you. You never showed emotion the way the other kids did. Sometimes you'd stare into the void and stand like that for hours. Sometimes you'd say strange things. I could feel the fear rising inside. What kind of fear? He looked me straight in the eye. You said you could see things that weren't there. I couldn't breathe. What did you mean by that? You said your sister shouldn't have been born. That she took something important from you. I grabbed my head. It was a lie. It was true. I started to choke. But then my father said the important thing. And then she was gone. I looked up sharply. What? You were the last person to see her. I took a step back. You're telling me that, we never found her body, Clara. I felt something inside me break. Did I do it? Did I kill my sister? I couldn't be here anymore. I turned and ran for the door, not hearing Nathan yell after me. I ran out into the night, not knowing where I was going. I needed to remember. I needed to know the truth. I was running for my life. My pulse was thudding in my ears. My head was ringing with thoughts. They'd been lying to me my whole life. But what if some of it was true? I couldn't breathe. Scraps of memories flashed through my mind. A dark room. Crying. Bright lights. My sister's voice. Clara, you're scaring me. I clenched my eyes shut, trying to put it out of my mind, but the images became clearer and clearer. I remembered looking at her. I remembered her crying. How something inside me whispered that she shouldn't be here. My sister. I opened my eyes. I really did. I felt nauseous. I fell to my knees right on the pavement, digging my fingers into the ground. They hadn't made it up, but I wasn't a monster. I was a kid who didn't know what he was doing. And instead of helping me, they just got rid of me. I slowly rose to my feet. I knew what to do next. I couldn't change the past, but I could change my future. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Hello. A voice answered. This is Clara Hayward. My voice was firm. I need to talk to you about my family. I was going to expose all the lies they were hiding, and no one else was going to keep me silent. I stood in front of the police station, feeling everything trembling inside me. I had come here willingly. I was going to tell everything about my disappearance, about my family, about what they'd been hiding all these years. But one thing scared me the most. What if they didn't believe me after I told them? I stepped inside and made my way to the counter. The officer looked up. "What can I do for you?" I took a breath. "I want to file a report." "To who?" I looked him in the eye. "My parents. A family scandal." While I was being questioned, I saw the officers looking at each other. The Emily Hayward case was long since closed. I was presumed dead, and now here I was, alive, talking about the kidnapping and the lies that had been covered up for 20 years. I was asked again and again for details. When I finished, the officer closed the folder and looked at me. "You realize that this is a very serious charge?" I nodded. "Yes. We will investigate it. But if your parents really changed the documents and hid your real fate, they will face criminal penalties." I was relieved, but also fear. This was the beginning of the end for my family. The masks fell. The news spread quickly. Within a couple of days, reporters were standing outside my parents' house. Hayward family found guilty of faking their daughter's disappearance. Emily Hayward is alive. What were her parents hiding? I saw the police cordon off their house. I saw the mother walk out of it with a blank stare, and the father hiding his face from the cameras. They couldn't hide anymore. The conversation they dreaded. A week later, I was allowed to meet my mother in the interrogation room. She looked broken. "You've ruined everything, haven't you?" she said quietly. I felt cold inside. I had told the truth. She looked at me as if I were a stranger. "Did it ever occur to you that sometimes the truth is more destructive than a lie?" I interlocked my fingers. "Maybe. But you made your choice 20 years ago. Now I've made mine." She closed her eyes. "You're still going to be alone, Emily." I frowned. "I'm not Emily anymore." She looked up at me. "Then who are you?" I stood up. "I'm the one who's finally free. A new life." A few months passed. I changed my identity. My name was Clara again. I moved to another city. I started from scratch. My parents got real sentences for forging documents and faking a disappearance. I didn't feel lost anymore. I knew who I was. I knew what I wanted. And most importantly, I would never again let anyone decide my fate. My life now belonged to me alone.